Pixar's Elio is a 2025 computer animated hit film, which is the latest science fiction outing for the studio, in its storied history, and I honestly still maintain that along with uh, Fantastic Four: First Steps and Superman, it was one of my top three favorite films of this past summer, which was running for some of my favorites of the year here, which is no small praise. And even though not everyone saw it, those who did, for the most part, hurts. I'm not going to hold it against you if you didn't entirely agree. Hey, really enjoy what I saw. Oh man. Oh man. And some people tried to who claim this was like a marketing issue, and I would say, well, yes and no. It's not that there weren't any ads at all for it. I still maintain I saw a fairly modest, a reasonable amount. I mean, at least multiple times per ad break on most of the things I watched was online. And other tie-ins, everything from restaurants, collabs, to Funko, pop figurines, to the big jewel, as you'd expect these kind of ones, the art book, which, on top of having in the complete screenplay, knows all the directors, the many iterations and they went through, and even though I'm not able to corroborate all the changes that I've heard were made, a lot of them I can by looking at the book as well as the deleted scenes from the home release piece. And even with that in mind, and I could still tell there's enough of what remained from previous versions to fit the story, and I can still tell it definitely has a clear fingerprints of all three directors. There's Adrian Molina before he had to leave to helm the upcoming sequel to Coco I'm low-key excited for, or Dome Shi of Tony Red fame, and Madeline Sherifon, with this making her first feature as one of three directors. And even though it ultimately made back a little more than its $150 million budget worldwide, with roughly half of that coming from the States, it is still not actually the biggest loss I've ever had. That honor still goes to another film I enjoyed, Onward, which made slightly less and cost slightly more, especially considering everything that happened. And I will acknowledge the effects the strikes and the pandemic had as well. Hell, and the concerns people do have the company are still valid, even if mine are a bit less severe here. That aside, there is a lot more going with this movie than one might think, and as I'm about to explain, it definitely, well, there's a bit of whiplash to go from your most successful whole film opening ever to one of your less successful ones, your lowest opening ever. It turns out the two movies actually share a lot more DNA than you think, as it does with other ones. Given how I'm adding it to the overlooked science fiction animations that found on Home Starter Pack, along with the likes of Treasure Planet, uh, Lightyear, and Strange World, which is the one comparison I can make in good faith. That, yeah, if I have to say one mistake corporate made, it was like basically they Sega themselves competing with themselves, much other ones are marquee, and it was very stiff competition, not just from their own Fantastic Four Steps and the live action of their own Stitch, though this movie and the Stitch fan base do share a lot of overlap, or even from Dragons, but also from Superman and Jurassic World, which a lot of which I also enjoyed and saw. Which, but enough about this. I mean, let's go over it again. The movie itself and how it really may on the surface seem like the silliest as one you could find, but ends up as one of the most emotionally engaging ones I've seen this year. Here is how Elio transcends emotion. I mean, the first point I'm addressing to show how the movie can send you on quite the emotionally powerful experience over its 98-minute runtime is, of course, the art direction. And I never really bought into the whole Behemoth argument and encourage others who believe that to find a new line of critique. He, to me, he there's a lot more to it than that. To mean, and given how they've iterated on on their proprietary render man, and for decades now, the effects still definitely show. Oh, and especially in terms of how on a basic level they can be like that, but when you start picking back the layers, they can be quite expressive of of that. It makes sense that rather than trying to be realistic, they make the people look like cartoon characters, and also, as I mentioned before, I just really enjoy the ragdoll physics of a lot of these characters, like how those have progressed over the years. Like comparing, say, how Woody moves as a little ragdoll cowboy in the first Toy Story to who the who when Elio is defying gravity as he gets abducted and playfully scanned, there was a clear difference. The color palettes, the whole design of the universe itself, which is like a city, a planet spacecraft hybrid, very much a space look and feel towards it, and even the Earthbound scenes though looking up Montez returns a lot of results all over the country for these Air Force bases. If I had to make an educated guess about where the one where they live is located, as with the Air and Space Museum, it would be the one that actually is in the Bay Area in California, and of course, I'll be mentioning other connections and details there here as I go along. But I would say that I, of course, just had a feeling that we'd see the usual little Pizza Planet truck, and naturally it was driving by I when and a familiar looking double was trimming the hedges out front and accidentally he nicks his finger, which he actually reattaches. And that's why I always wear work gloves even when just doing mowing or raking nowadays. Hmm. Yeah. Overall, the alien designs are also a key standouts with many of them taking the own take on the whole space and ocean idea, with all of them being influenced by sea creatures, such as the tardigrade water bear, and we'll touch on this again very soon. I've always been a huge fan of how effectively the studio has used sound, and even when dialogue is not present, and they always make sure you're listening. And in this case, up and coming composer Rob Simonson and has done a fantastic job with the music, which definitely combines both otherworldly as well as resonant elements, like the opening themes from the vanity plates, as well as the scenes create a sense of both wonder and also a loss, because that's how the film functionally begins in theatrical version, like how the title character is stricken with grief over her losing his parents, so much so that that he hasn't really eaten or even spoken since the event happened with the figurines as hands, which will probably be gifts from his late parents. He's at a complete loss for words until he finds the exhibit they're opening featuring the Voyager spacecraft we sent out decades ago, oh, and the Golden Record, heard, which, and naturally another Voyager, her, none other than Captain and Janeway herself, Kate Mulgrew, doing the voiceover over in that part, heard, and given how some of the other things we see are often thought provoking and as they are trippy, he calls to mind V'ger way back in '79. I mean, yes. And also, oh, even though the usage of pop songs they do have, they tend not to rely on them as heavily as other er, animation studios. But the ones that do use are quite effective. Like, I definitely tend to associate a headcanon version of him with Queen, and not just Don't Stop Me from the Jazz LP, but very to have the use of Talking Heads Once in a Lifetime, as well as one I was not as familiar with as his double all was back home and he was trying to make peace. He's he's Como Abeja al Panal, which also is important later, but I also always appreciate whenever a film can introduce me to a song I have not heard before and it clicks with me. Hey, and let's just say that this movie is really good at definitely placing things on a table, and it's not the first time I've seen this happen either from them. As literary conventions often suggest, as once a Chekhov's gun or a similar narrative device is placed on the mantle, well, it's obviously going to get fired off before the story is over, and this is something that this movie and Studio excel at, man. That's where the ham radio that Elio attempts to use to contact life on other planets is not only like a hobby that is shared by other people living in the area, uh, but also appears to be one how he sends his message to the aliens and how he helps navigate through the debris field in climax. While on that subject, his guardian, and whose name is Olga, is tracking in the debris above them, um, and anyone who's seen Gravity would also know how how much trouble it could cause while I was right up there. Here, but at one point she was also going to be going to space herself before she became um, Elio's primary caregiver. Her and even in little details, hills end up paying off later, such as the child psychology book she's is reading to try and figure out how what the deal is with her nephew or son, depending on which can subscribe to, who is also going to be. It was also in the stack of books that she's trying to figure out how it's about the double as well. I mean, since even in little details, hills like how he added a little bit of flair to the portions of his capes. Capes like soda pull tabs and old plastic utensils. I mean, I might be mistaken, but I think the actual poles themselves might be old coffee filters that he painted. I mean, but he also It also ends up happening when he gets a new outfit made out of nanotech. So very shiny one at that. And likewise, even in little bits like discovering Gordon in his quarters, and how Grygon is a force to be reckoned with, but he definitely understands he has to play ball. I'll be mentioning this further as I continue, but in many respects, X Grygon's kind of reversal of Darth Vader, her being, and while they're both characters in armor that are the father of one of the major heroes, the relationship is quite different. Whereas Vader only truly recognized Luke as his son in his final moments after he sacrificed himself to save him, Grygon's relationship with Gordon is protective, if unconventional. The one thing he likes more than conquest and soldiering is his child. And on that subject, it's also kind of like a reversal of Zurg in the Toy Story franchise as well. Oh, oh, and the only real similarity that they share is that they are major antagonists towards their respective heroic factions, and with Zurg's being the Galactic Alliance and Grygon's being the Communiverse. And with that in mind, it definitely leads me to my next point I want to address of the six I'm bringing up tonight. Another thing that the film is home on the other filmography I've read doing is like building bonds that, while entertaining on the surface level, to be sure, can go well beyond on that. In many ways, he's he's Elio and his bond with Gordon do symbolize that quite effectively, as well as the relationships being built with other envoys of the universe, such as Ayla, Mira, uh, and a whole host of others, but even with other people as well. Oh, that's we have Gunther Melmac, an eccentric but intelligent and and technician who also is another fellow ham hobbyist, which was me coming in handy. He, and I'll continue to explain why in the second half of this video. Oh, and even though as much as he tries to deny they are indeed a family, and it does make sense of the story, even in removing the bereavement aspects. A lot of kids would say, "Hey, hey, dumb things don't mean they're upset." And also it's clear that even if she isn't ready to admit it, that the loss has impacted Olga as well. Oh, and definitely, as I continue to mention that, the armor isn't just like the usual whole method protection from plasma weapons and or other environmental effects. It's been noted that it's a symbolic kind of armor, or that acts as shield to other kinds of damage, which is key. He, but even with him dedicating himself to his armada and soldiers, and Gordon's mother staying in dialogue to be off planet and at somewhere else, who knows where, here, not even clear it's even the same solar system, um, especially given how it's said that every star system could potentially have its own system of planets. It's and even our own, we keep discovering more and more. And this also applies from like a storytelling level as well. I definitely noticed a lot of the tonal and structural similarities to the 80s and 90s works of the likes of Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Robert Zemeckis, and as I pointed out before, the works of Carl Sagan, whose audiobooks that actually are bookend the movie near the beginning when Ale's listening to them on his mobile, as well as in the closing moments that ask are we alone? The way they're holding hands and watching the sunrise together, I suggest otherwise. Hmm. I've mentioned this before, her, but in many cases, his his deviating from the intended plan can often make a story more interesting in order to complete the objectives within the story. He, at first, the basic goal is that Elio wants to get abducted by aliens, go to space. Though it is a plan that meets a few hitches, as culminating with the scrap on the beach with Bryce and Caleb. Uh, and that was actually, and I was guessing about what was with the eye patch. As at first, myself, I just interpreted it as flare initially, and but one of my guesses was the scrap on the beach, and also messing with the radio. Oh, and naturally results in contact they were playing game Streets of Rage. I mean, age where then he ends up getting sent to the same military academy, a summer camp that his auntie attended, and but naturally, because the same kids also got in trouble for that aforementioned scrap on the beach, each tried to prank him, but that not only goes sideways because as one, and he was not in his bed, but he ends up getting exactly what he wanted, being abducted in the beam of lights, into the very space age spacecraft city planet hybrid. That's their HQ and also is their official badge. And with that in mind, and he ends up getting involved. Like even though he would have just had to go for the usual initiation because of Gragon on threatening to send in his soldiers and armada, uh, if no one, unless people will not negotiate with him. Um, since he agrees to do it, and even though he does have a little conscious self doubt he's on over his head, he does end up breaking ice a bit and even easing intentions as well. He thinks he's also being held in his son's quarters, but he also ends up befriending in Gordon, a tardigrade water bear, who other people point out sounds a little bit like the like Sweet Pea from Adventure Time. I'm I really like how Henry Edgerly he he reads their lines. I think the kid has a lot of promise, as does Eunice. And trying to escape from the ship, he ends up having to go inside with the aid of Gordon by lava tunnels. Apart from the you only get one joke, like I mentioned, I once go reiterate, especially the time here I'm finally posting this. This is if you might think it was too spooky for smaller children, I would say it's just the right amount. It's definitely perfect for your monster celebrations to help break up watching Night Before Christmas and Hocus Pocus Umpteen Time, 1993, and and even and when he also tries to use a cloning clay, which again can be used any DNA sample, be it a piece of hair, piece of tissue, a drop of blood, and oh yes, even mucus or saliva, and the ruse discovered as it ends up turning the clone into a mound of Camino and Play-Doh. Oh, the expression's going like, oh, oh, Fizz, now what? When and Elio is outed, and it's also clear that Quest doesn't want to do this, but he's sending him back to Earth for his own good, and his cape flying off in the water, her out there near the beach, ends up being the same scene that not only does the patch come off with him and his auntie reconciling on the beach, and ends up being vital to getting the spacecraft back to the ship at Bacon Universe, and with his. I definitely still like the Envoy vessel all there, and also the nods to other science fiction works, with like how like the clone can actually disassemble themselves into goo, like giving the T2 thumbs up there, and slipping in one of the white hazmat suits, and of course, there's he he would bust out of there like a xenomorph pupa, and to be sure. And I especially also enjoy, as I'm about to explain, just how many connections there are in each moment of this film. How, even if I may not have seen it way at first, especially someone who's seen this one at least 5 times, including when I first saw it theatrically about 4 months ago, and once again this evening in order to talk about this, is 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 everything is connected in some way, even if it's not always obvious at first. As I have been building up everything in this movie is connected in some way, and I don't just mean like the little viral tease for their next original film, which, given how well the younger generation has been appreciating that one, actually bodes pretty well all for next spring. And it is one that shows that there's connections and everywhere. I mean, or that there are reasons why people do what they do, and why nothing truly happens without a reason. And and especially like the inciting incidents where they get a message back from the Voyager probe and the Golden Record, heard which Elio of course finds out about by using his grabber, which can lift anything from a single paperclip to a 5 pound bag of sugar, and also builds upon things like how the way that he not only briefly loses his shoe while hiding in a dustbin and trying to contact the aliens, they sends a message. He also hastily retrieves it before the power goes out of the base. It's as if he just created a resonance cascade, and and as turns out that especially in the final reconciliation before the which officially cuts the third act on the beach, is they both were affected by the same loss, albeit in very different ways. He lost parents. She lost her brother. Her and with that being the case, the And it also ties to some of the alterations made that not only does Grigon keep his word about leaving in peace, he's he's in the Data Mons, and he also respects his son's decision to not follow his warlike path, and even though it looks like he's about to strike like Elio down, he actually instead tears off his armor to get his body temperature back up, even swallowing him in his webbing, and and how naturally Gunther's hobby with the ham as with Bryce's going under the call sign PXLL ends up to a whole world of connections and navigate the debris field, which also end up connecting to who shows other filmography, he, where we see a few appearances of the Star Command sigil. The most noticeable one I saw was in Gunther's garage, and one of the people in the Ham network are leading the debris field so they can do the lightspeed jump. Is Julia from Italia. Uh, I mean, it's a fairly common name, and I do appreciate the little nod to Luca, which I rather enjoyed in years past. I still do. And even in the familiar Luxable lamp do make their appearance uh, as part of the hero's drawers. That aside, I'd it definitely is one I will continue to enjoy for years to come, no matter what happens in this come award season. And I genuinely believe this one, out of the animated films I've seen this year, is one of the ones that will age the best. I mean, as I do not know the long term prospects of these K-pop singers who is selling millions upon millions of LPs despite being cartoon characters. I do know that a lot of the states in this movie, especially with those under one title character, are ones that can appeal to everyone. I mean, it's not the only movie I've seen in the summer that touches on these subjects, but the experiences that can be felt by anyone of any age, wonder, joy, sorrow, grief, rage, fear, discovery, a, a, and most of all, empathy. It's for these why I will have no regrets over enjoying this film, because the central even if some people might not think otherwise of the idea of theme in fiction, is that in life we are never truly alone. Okay, bye. I love you.